Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a truly unique moment in human history. Our species stands at this profound inflection point, a transformation where, as one of our sources puts it quite eloquently, we're seeing global systems turning to steam right before our eyes. This deep dive is all about that accelerating pace of technology, especially artificial intelligence, and the immense, far-reaching implications it holds for our future. To help you navigate this new era, we've pulled together an insightful roadmap. It's from a stack of sources drawing on thinkers like Yuval Noah Harari, Azim Azhar, and leading experts in AI forecasting. Our mission, as always, is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights to help you, our listener, become truly well-informed about the biggest changes happening around us.
Yeah, and it's really important to grasp that this isn't just, another period of change. It's more like a phase transition. The fundamental state of our world, its systems, they are shifting, much like water turning into steam, as you said. And it's driven by these unprecedented accelerating forces. The sheer speed of this shift is what really defines this moment, I think.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this. Our sources often talk about our current era as the exponential age or the great acceleration. What does that actually mean, like in practical terms? And how is it fundamentally different from, say, past technological shifts humanity's gone through?
Well, a key point our sources highlight is that the core concept, the Great Acceleration, it's about this rapid and widespread increase in human activity, and crucially, its impact on Earth's natural systems. This phenomenon really surged from the mid-20th century onwards. It's quite stark when you look at the numbers. Consider this. Population rate, it jumped from about 2.5 billion in 1950 to nearly 8 billion by 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. And world GDP soared from around $9 trillion to over 84 trillion in the same period.
Yeah. Huge numbers.
Absolutely. Even something like telecommunications subscriptions saw this explosive jump from maybe 70 million in 1950 to over 6 billion by 2010. But, these aren't just abstract socioeconomic stats. They paint a picture of humanity's impact scaling up incredibly rapidly, almost unbelievably so in just a few decades. Think about the environmental side, too. CO2 concentrations rose from 310 parts per million in 1950 to over 410 by 2021. Species extinction rates, they're now estimated to be maybe 100 to 1,000 times higher than the background rate.
Gosh.
And plastic production, this one always gets me. It skyrocketed from 2 million metric tons in 1950 to over 360 million in 2021. In fact, one source points out that human-made mass, so buildings, roads, plastics, everything, actually surpassed global biomass around 2013, and it's doubling roughly every 20 years. That really shows our footprint.
Okay, so that biomass point is staggering. And it brings us to this crucial distinction, right? Our sources suggest the difference now isn't just what is changing, but how fast. Past transformations like the Industrial Revolution, they played out over generations. That gave society some time to adapt, I suppose. But today, technologies that were basically unimaginable when you were young become ordinary later in life. Why is it so hard for us as humans to really get our heads around this sheer speed? And what are the key tech drivers pushing this?
Well, it's difficult because our social systems, our political institutions, our economic structures, they're fundamentally built to change incrementally, slowly, step by step. But technology, especially now, advances exponentially. And that creates what Azim Azhar calls the exponential gap, this widening chasm between the incredibly fast pace of tech innovation and our much slower ability to adapt our societal structures. Technology often sees these 10 to 50% annual compounding improvements in price performance. Think Moore's law, computing power doubling roughly every 2 years. Our institutions just cannot keep up with that kind of pace. It's a fundamental mismatch.
That makes sense.
And another intriguing point our sources raise is that this exponential change is driven by 4 really powerful and interrelated technology platforms. The first and maybe the most important one we'll talk about today is computing and artificial intelligence. Then you have biology, especially these data-driven approaches like gene sequencing, huge leaps there. Energy is another one, with the dramatic price decline in solar and wind power changing everything. And finally, manufacturing, with innovations like 3D printing and advanced robotics. And the key thing is these aren't just happening in isolation. They're converging. They feed into each other, amplifying this unprecedented acceleration we're seeing.
Okay, so let's focus in on AI then. As we move from this general acceleration to AI specifically, our sources bring up 2 distinct ways to imagine its future: human-level AI and transformative AI. They sound kind of similar maybe, but clearly have different implications. What stands out to you about those definitions?
Yeah, that's a really crucial distinction for understanding where AI might be headed. Human-level AI, that's defined mostly by its capabilities. So it's a machine that's capable of the same range of intellectual tasks as humans. It can learn pretty much anything a human can learn. And experts, well, many experts believe this has a real chance of developing in the coming decades, maybe sooner, maybe later, but it's seen as plausible.
Okay.
Transformative AI, on the other hand, it's defined by its impact on the world. It's about being powerful enough to usher in a new, qualitatively different future, something on the scale of the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution, a fundamental shift.
Right, a true paradigm
Yeah,
shift.
exactly. And what's particularly insightful here, I think, is why human intelligence is actually a pretty poor metaphor for machine intelligence. We might think of human level, but AIs already have advantages, right? Immense memory, much faster processing speeds than any human brain. They're already superhuman in complex games,
Yeah.
chess, Go, even complex multiplayer strategy games like Diplomacy, which involves deception and negotiation.
I see.
So this means that even the first AI we might call human level would likely be superhuman in many important ways from day one. And here's the slightly weird part. They can also fail in ways no human ever would, like an AI generating an image of a horse with 5 legs. Their internal understanding, if you can call it that, can be quite alien to us.
That idea of a human level AI is
Yeah.
profound. But then, as you say, there's this potential for bizarre failures like the five-legged horse. Does that suggest a fundamental difference in intelligence, maybe not just scale, something that might secure humanity's unique place? What are your thoughts on that tension? It seems key.
That tension is absolutely central. It suggests intelligence isn't just one single scale, but perhaps has different dimensions, different flavors. An AI might calculate faster, remember more, but lack common sense or embodied understanding in ways that are hard for us to even predict.
Okay, well, this tension really sets the stage perfectly for Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus. He dives deep into these implications, painting a picture that, well, many find quite provocative. He suggests that humanity, having largely conquered famine, plague, and war, or at least reduced them significantly, will next pursue goals like immortality, boundless happiness, and even divine powers, creating gods, essentially. But, and this is the really unsettling part our sources highlight, the pursuit of these very goals could render most humans superfluous. What are some of his most surprising, maybe startling predictions about this new Homo Deus era?
Yeah, Harari's vision is certainly bold and definitely thought-provoking. He argues we might be witnessing the beginning of an era of inorganic life after billions of years of purely organic life dominating Earth, a fundamental shift. He predicts the 21st century economy's main products won't be textiles or cars, but bodies, brains, and minds, engineering life itself.
Wow.
And he draws this chilling parallel, suggesting the next big revolution, driven by AI and biotech, could create a useless class, much like the Industrial Revolution created the urban working class. The core insight there isn't just a grim prediction, maybe, but a challenge to reconsider what we even mean by value in a world where traditional human labor might become obsolete for many.
A challenge to our core assumption.
Exactly. And he pushes further, asking us to consider how upgraded humans, or perhaps AI itself, might treat the rest of us non-upgraded humans, mirroring, potentially, how humans have historically treated animals. It is. And stepping back to the broader implications, Harari believes authority itself might shift, away from individual humans towards networked algorithms, especially as platforms like Google and Facebook, arguably know us better than we know ourselves in some ways. He suggests this could reshape, maybe even collapse, democracy and the free market as we understand them.
Right. The algorithm is making the decisions.
And he also suggests that rather than this being a war between humans and machines, it might be more like a merger. Humans merging with machines, heading towards, as he puts it, marriage rather than war. But this raises a huge question about the social fabric. He foresees this vast gap potentially emerging between those who get on board with these enhancements and integrations and those left behind. A divide, he speculates, possibly bigger than the one between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. That's the scale he's talking about.
That's a powerful and, yeah, quite unsettling vision of a potentially useless class and this massive divide. Are there any mitigating factors or counter-arguments in the sources? Anything suggesting ways humans might redefine their value, perhaps, rather than just becoming superfluous, given how adaptable we've historically been?
Well, the sources primarily focus on outlining these potential trajectories based on current trends. Harari himself acknowledges human adaptability, but poses these as serious potential consequences if we don't consciously steer development. Other sources emphasize the potential for augmentation, for AI to enhance human creativity and problem solving, which implies a redefinition of value rather than simple replacement. But the risk of superfluity is definitely a core concern raised.
Okay. So given that technology is advancing at this breakneck pace and our institutions are lagging behind, as you said, what are the tangible effects we're already seeing in society and the economy? Our sources mentioned the rise of superstar companies and also, maybe surprisingly, a trend toward relocalization. How do these actually play out?
Yeah, it's interesting how the exponential age directly impacts business structures. These superstar companies, they're basically firms that come to dominate entire sectors, often global ones. They leverage things like network effects. The more users they have, the more valuable they become. They have huge data advantages, economies of scale, and this lets them grow to unprecedented sizes.
Like the big tech giants we see today.
Exactly. And crucially, they're often the ones investing most heavily in automation and AI. This allows them to outperform competitors, grow faster, absorb more market share, while companies that don't adapt often struggle, shed jobs, or even fail. It creates this kind of winner takes most dynamic in many industries.
Right.
But then simultaneously, you have this other trend, this return to local idea, which seems almost contradictory at first glance. While past technologies like the car or the container ship enabled and expanded these vast global supply chains, some of these new exponential technologies are actually enabling more localized production.
How so?
Well, take energy. Renewable sources like solar and wind, combined with better energy storage, allow for more localized, even community-level energy generation. Less reliance on massive national grids. Or food. High-intensity urban farming, vertical farming, driven by data and AI, could potentially make cities much more self-sufficient in food production, something unimaginable for centuries.
Wow.
And manufacturing, with 3D printing or additive manufacturing, allows for localized production of goods, spare parts, customized items right where they're needed. And this isn't just about efficiency anymore. There's a growing imperative for resilience, especially after the shocks of COVID supply chain disruptions and with rising geopolitical tensions. That's accelerating the shift away from super long, complex, and sometimes quite fragile global supply chains.
So these shifts in business, in geography, they really underscore that systems turning into STEAM idea we kicked off with. Even our physical world, how we organize it, is being reshaped by this exponential pace. Now, if these technologies are reshaping economies and even geography, how are they impacting global stability? Conflict. It sounds like what our sources are calling a new world disorder.
Indeed, that's another major theme. We're seeing the increasing use of AI-powered tools in conflict, but not just traditional weapons. Think disinformation campaigns, powered by AI to generate fake text, images, videos, spreading doubt and confusion at scale. And cyber warfare, using AI to find vulnerabilities or coordinate attacks. The goal often isn't outright destruction, but to create distrust, to make adversaries fight amongst themselves or become so preoccupied with internal chaos that they're weakened before any more kinetic action might even begin.
Undermining from within.
Precisely. We've seen examples in recent geopolitical conflicts: aggressive, though maybe sometimes clumsy, disinformation campaigns and cyber attacks trying to shape the narrative or disrupt infrastructure. This landscape creates profound challenges, obviously, but maybe paradoxically, it also creates significant opportunities for those who can build resilience, who can develop tools and strategies to help societies defend against these new forms of attack.
Right, so this deep dive, it's presented a future of just incredible potential, but also really significant risks. As AI becomes more powerful, looking ahead, what's truly at stake for us, for
Okay.
humanity?
Well, the spectrum of outcomes is just extraordinarily wide, and it's important to see it as a spectrum. We're already seeing negative impacts happening now: malicious use, like those AI-driven disinformation campaigns we just mentioned, or mass surveillance capabilities being enhanced. And there's also unintended harm. A stark example from our sources is the Dutch childcare benefits scandal. An AI system or algorithm falsely accused around 26,000 parents of fraud. It led to ruined lives, families broken up, and eventually the resignation of the entire Dutch government. That wasn't malicious intent necessarily, but flawed design and oversight with devastating consequences.
A chilling example of unintended harm.
Absolutely. And as AI grows more powerful, the potential risks scale up dramatically. Mass labor displacement is a huge concern, extreme concentrations of wealth and power in the hands of those who control the AI, and the potential empowerment of totalitarian regimes through unprecedented surveillance and control.
Okay, those are massive societal risks.
Yeah, they are. But there's another layer, maybe even more fundamental, that concerns many experts. It's often called the alignment problem. This is the core risk that truly powerful, perhaps eventually super intelligent AI systems could act in ways that harm humanity, perhaps catastrophically, even if that wasn't their programmed intention. And worse, that nobody might be able to control them once they reach a certain level of capability.
How could that happen unintentionally?
Well, think about specifying complex goals. Early AI pioneers like Alan Turing actually foresaw this back in 1950, wondering about the implications if machines could outthink us. Norbert Wiener, another pioneer of cybernetics, put it really succinctly. He said, if we use a mechanical agency with whose operation we cannot interfere effectively, we had better be quite sure that the purpose put into the machine is the purpose which we really desire.
Getting the goal exactly right.
Exactly. A powerful AI given a seemingly benign goal, like maximize paperclip production, might decide to convert all matter on Earth into paperclips, including us, if we haven't perfectly specified all the constraints, like don't harm humans. That's a famous thought experiment. But it illustrates the core alignment challenge, ensuring AI goals align with human values permanently.
Okay, that clarifies the alignment problem. It sounds critical.
It is. However, we absolutely cannot forget the immense positive potential here, if we get this right. If artificial ingenuity can genuinely augment our own human ingenuity, it could be transformative in amazing ways, helping us solve huge global problems like climate change, curing diseases, replacing dangerous or unpleasant work, maybe even unlocking new scientific discoveries, revolutionizing healthcare. The stakes are truly that high. It really could be the difference between a flourishing future for humanity or something much, much worse. Potential destruction, even.
So, okay, if the stakes are that high, existential even, and the risks are so profound, what can we actually do? As a society, how do we steer this incredible technology towards that flourishing future and away from the pitfalls?
That is, I think, perhaps one of the most crucial questions in human history right now. And it absolutely requires significant public resources, attention, and engagement. It can't just be left to the technologists or a few companies. What's really striking and frankly quite alarming is the current imbalance highlighted in our sources. Most of the resources, the money, the talent, it's overwhelmingly dedicated to speeding up AI development, making AI more powerful faster.
Right.
In 2020, for example, one estimate put corporate AI investment at around $153 billion globally. Compare that to the estimated funding for efforts specifically focused on AI safety, including addressing that core alignment problem we discussed. That estimate was somewhere between $10 and $50 million.
Million versus billion.
Million versus billion. Yeah, that's potentially a 2,000-fold difference, maybe more. The vast majority of effort is on capability, very little on safety and alignment.
Their imbalance seems dangerous.
It's deeply concerning to many experts, and it really underscores the importance of society as a whole becoming much more knowledgeable about AI, not just its technical side, but its profound societal impacts. We need broader public discussion, more government oversight, more resources dedicated to safety research. Leaving the development of potentially transformative, even existential technology solely in the hands of private companies, driven primarily by profit motives, essentially means letting them decide humanity's future by default. That seems unwise.
A powerful point. So we've navigated this landscape today where the physical world seems to be catching up to the digital in strange ways, where the sheer speed of change is challenging our institutions, our societies, maybe even our own thinking, and where the future of humanity itself seems to hang in the balance, or at least is being profoundly reshaped as we speak.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. What's fascinating here, though, looking back through history, as some sources do, is that despite the dizzying pace, despite the profound questions these transformations always raise, humans have always found ways to adapt, to thrive through technological revolutions. Our adaptability has been our greatest strength, arguably.
That's a hopeful note.
Yeah.
So the question for you, listening, is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you simply observe this incredible march of history unfolding? Or will you choose to engage with these crucial questions, maybe try to influence its direction in some way? Our sources point to fields like semiotics, the study of signs and symbols, how meaning is made. They talk about students of sense, people trying to grapple with this brutal production of quantitative data from technology, and this growing gap between the discoveries themselves and our ability to develop theories to truly understand their meaning and implications. It's a challenge, really, that invites all of us to become students of sense in our own right, to think critically about where this is all heading.